The 1964 Vikings had an 8-win, 5-loss, and 1-tie team that finished out of the playoffs. How would the 1965 Vikings in their 5th year of existence finish? Quarterback Fran Tarkenton was the Vikings' main attraction, and his incredible scrambling ability made him the star of the show. In 1965, Tarkenton made the NFL All-Star team for the second straight season on the basis of 19 touchdown passes and only 11 interceptions, while throwing for the third most yards. In Week 1 at Baltimore, Tarkenton hit tight end Hal Bedsole with a 36-yard scoring strike in a 35-16 loss. However, in Week 3, the Vikings got their first win in a 38-35 shootout at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Roman Gabriel threw a screen pass to running back Terry Baker, who turned it into a 38-yard score. Baker was the 1962 Heisman Trophy winner at Oregon State as a quarterback. He was also the point guard on their 1963 Final Four basketball team. After only throwing 9 passes in 1963, he was converted to running back in 1964, and at the end of the 1965 season, his NFL career was finished. First-year Vikings flanker Red Phillips caught this pass. He made the NFL All-Star team each year from 1960 through 1962, and his 72 catches in 1961 led the NFL when he made first-team All-Pro. He chipped in with 15 grabs in 1965. This was his only touchdown reception of the year. On this play, number 20 Tommy Mason chops down one would-be tackler and leg whips another to clear the deck for Phil King, a 6'4", 225-pound, 8-year NFL veteran. Solo fullback Bill Brown caught this pass, and tight end Gordy Smith executed a fine block. Brown's 2-yard plunge made the score 35-21. The Vikings' drive stalled. The Rams scored 2 touchdowns and evened the score at 35, and with 2 minutes left in the game, Fred Cox's 14-yard field goal made the Vikings winners. Fred Cox led the NFL in field goals attempted, field goals made, including an NFL-high 53-yarder. The longest of his 15-year career, and made all 44 of his point-after attempts, yet he amazingly was not named to the All-Star team, nor first or second All-Pro teams. Punter Bobby Walden had a fine year with his 42.1 average punt. His 46.4 average as a Vikings rookie in 1964 led the NFL. Fullback Bill Boom Boom Brown made the 1965 All-Star team. His 699 rushing yards were 6th best in the NFL, and he was a fine receiver, as his 503 receiving yards attest. In Week 5 against the Bears, the Vikings rushed for a season-high 304 yards and 4 touchdowns, but lost 45-37. One of the Vikings' favorite pass plays was the screen pass. Flanker Tom Hall, number 28, demonstrated a key block on the on-rushing Bears player to spring Bill Brown. Halfback Tommy Mason played lightning to Bill Brown's thunder in 1965. Mason's 597 rushing yards were 10th best in the NFL. He chipped in with 321 receiving yards, and he scored 11 touchdowns. Mason was the first overall draft pick in the NFL's 1961 draft and is the answer to a good trivia question. Who is the Vikings' first All-Pro player? He was named first-team All-Pro in 1963. Dave Osborne was the Vikings' 13th round draft pick in 1965. He played 11 seasons with Minnesota, gained over 5,700 scrimmage yards, scored 36 touchdowns, and epitomized the meaning of grit and determination. Center Mick Tingelhoff made the 1965 All-Star team and was the anchor of the Vikings' offensive line that rushed the most times in the NFL for the second most yards. Here Tingelhoff delivers a perfect crackback block to free Fran Tarkenton. Tackle Grady Alderman also made the All-Star team in 1965. It was one of 6 times that the hugely underrated lineman did. Here he stonewalled defensive end Andy Stinchula, a 6-year starter. Left guard Milt Sunday was the Vikings' 20th round draft pick in 1964. He rewarded the Vikings with 147 games played in 11 seasons. While he didn't make the All-Star team in 1965, he did in 1966. He was a terrific pulling guard. Right guard Larry Bowie played in 92 games over 7 seasons for the Vikings. On this play, he cuts down fellow Purdue University alum Lamar Lundy, number 85. In Week 6 at Kezar Stadium in San Francisco, the Vikings won another game in a high-scoring fashion. First, Bill Brown received, and then he blocked extremely well to allow Tommy Mason a clear path to the end zone. Fran Tarkenton threw for a season-high 407 yards, 38 to Paul Flatley here. John Brody and Bernie Casey connected on a 21-yard scoring pass to make the score 35-14 San Francisco. Here's a unique play. It's a type of misdirectional pulling by the guards. Larry Bowie leads Milt Sunday. Bowie wipes out a cornerback, while Sunday easily subdues another defensive back, and it's clear sailing for Tommy Mason. Late in the game, down 42-41, John Brody fired to Bernie Casey, but free safety Larry Vargo intercepted to ice the win for the Vikings. The Vikings head coach was Norm Van Brocklin, who was in his 5th season in that capacity. In 1960, he not only led the Philadelphia Eagles to the NFL championship, but he was also first-team All-Pro. He retired as a player thereafter. How's that to end a playing career? The Dutchman, as he was nicknamed, became the Vikings' inaugural head coach the next year and won 3, 2, 5, and 8 games in his first 4 years. The Vikings played their home games at Metropolitan Stadium, which was also the home to the Minnesota Twins. The seating capacity for Vikings games was 47,900, which was less than the 50,000 that was later required as part of the NFL and AFL merger agreement. The powers that be overlooked that shortcoming. For Minnesota Twins games, the seating capacity in 1965 was exactly 2,000 less, 45,900. Van Brocklin was a pocket passer who rarely ran the ball, while Fran Tarkenton was the exact opposite in that regard. Heated arguments over Tarkenton's scrambling play were commonplace. Tarkenton was the son of a Methodist minister who understandably took exception to the salty speech of the brash, outspoken Van Brocklin. Unable to peacefully coexist, both men were no longer employed by the Vikings in 1967. Van Brocklin was quoted as saying, "Francis will make some plays that he shouldn't make, but he'll also lose some games that he shouldn't." Van Brocklin believed that less improvising and a more conventional approach would yield better results. And Paul Flatley was the Vikings' leading receiver in 1965. His 50 receptions were the 10th most in the NFL, and his 856 yards 6th best. In 1963, he was the NFL's Rookie of the Year, with 51 catches and 867 receiving yards. Both marks were the 10th most in the NFL. In Week 11, quarterback Ryan Vanderkellen and Flatley teamed up for a 38-yard gain. Flatley caught 5 balls for 93 yards in a 45-24 loss. While the Vikings defense dished out a lot of hard hits, they also gave up a lot of points, the most in the NFL. Here they harassed Giants quarterback Earl Morrall for a safety. Number 81 is Carl Eller, who was the Vikings' first-round pick in 1964. He sacked Lions quarterback Milt Plum for a safety and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2004. Number 77 is defensive tackle Gary Larson, who was involved in a 1965 trade with the Rams that included the draft rights to offensive end Jack Snow. Left linebacker Lonnie Warwick was signed as a free agent by Minnesota in 1964. He spent the entire season on the taxi squad, but started 7 games in 1965 and displayed excellent instincts and tackling technique. Middle linebacker Rip Hawkins was the second player ever drafted by the Vikings. He was their team captain, but retired at the end of the season in order to pursue a legal career. In 1966, he was replaced at middle linebacker by Lonnie Warwick. Right defensive end Jim Marshall had 7.5 sacks in 1965 after posting double-digit sack totals the 2 years prior. Here he wreaks havoc with Roman Gabriel's passing plans, and later he does the same with Bill Munson. The star of the Viking secondary was number 45, Ed Sharachman. An original Viking, he played with them through the 1972 season, and his 40 career interceptions is third best in Vikings history. In Week 7 at Cleveland, Jim Marshall slid down the line and dropped Jim Brown for no gain. He dropped him again for a 2-yard loss, as the Vikings only allowed 169 total net yards. They held the great Jim Brown to only 39 rushing yards on 18 carries. Fred Cox's 18-yard field goal put the finishing touch on the Vikings' 27-17 win over the 1964 world champion Browns. In Week 12 against the Packers, this field goal attempt was deflected by Jeff Jordan, but Don Chandler's kick went through the uprights. In the final minutes of the game, Minnesota trailed 24-19 when Tarkenton hit Tom Hall for an apparent touchdown. However, Hall was called for offensive pass interference and the play was nullified. Tarkenton tried to pull a rabbit out of his hat again, but his pass to Red Phillips was deemed to be incomplete. Out of bounds was the call, and the Vikings lost in a heartbreaker. In the last game of the season at Wrigley Field, the Bears and Vikings battled through a scoreless first half, but Ronnie Bull broke the ice on this play. Fred Cox responded as he successfully kicked his 29th straight field goal from within 35 yards. Rookie sensation Gale Sayers displayed his Hall of Fame talents as he averaged 5.9 yards on 14 carries. Tom Hall received these Tarkenton passes, and he played running back in 1962 for the Lions, then free safety for them in 1963. In 1964, the Lions sold him to the Vikings, and Minnesota converted him to flanker. He caught 81 passes for the Vikings during 5 seasons. Rudy Bukic dropped back, Jim Marshall disrupted a design screen pass, then Bukic panicked and erratically threw over the middle to Rip Hawkins, who provided the winning margin in a thrilling Vikings victory. The Vikings finished with a 7-win and 7-loss record, but provided their fans with a lot of great memories like this Tarkenton scramble and touchdown pass.